Different, Melanie Stark.
Think different. Shouldn't it be think differently? How many people here are as crazy about Apple products as I am? Okay, a few. Well, you have to admit, this logo is beautiful. That bitten apple, it reminds me of the legendary forbidden fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. But what has always eluded me is how they could come up with such a brilliant logo and have such terrible grammar. Mr. Contest Chair, fellow Toastmasters, and honored guests, perhaps we need to ask a new question. What if they meant for different to be a noun in this sentence? I first learned about thinking different from my now 8-year-old son, who loves computers, but people don't usually see his genius when they first meet him. Instead, they see a kid who screams in the middle of public places, like the library. People often see a kid who's undisciplined. And what they don't know was that when he was 5 years old, he was diagnosed with autism. I didn't want him to know that he was autistic because I was afraid he would use that as an excuse for his behavior. So instead, I developed this system of rewards and punishments to try to mold him into a person that would be worthy of society. But his behavior just kept getting worse and worse. Finally, he came to me one day and he said, Mom, I finally figured out why I'm always getting in trouble. It's because I have autism. By the way, what's autism? I was not ready for this question. If he would have just asked me where babies come from, I was ready for that one. So I said, let's talk about that after dinner. Then I went into the kitchen and I'm cooking dinner with one hand and I'm frantically searching for answers with the other. How many of you guys have done this before? How do I explain what autism is to my son? But I couldn't find anything that resonated with me. Finally, I just admitted defeat. And that's when it hit me. The answer was, in fact, on my computer, but it wasn't on the screen. It was in that bitten apple on the back. That night, my son and I went up and we compared those two computers side by side. I said, this is a PC and this is a Mac. Neither of these computers is better than the other, but if people were computers, most of us would be PCs. But you're a Mac because you have a different operating system. Well, my son looked at those two computers and then he looked at me and he said, okay, and then he booted up a video game. I took a minute and I just admired at how much those two computers look alike on the outside. They both had these flat screens and this intricate network of cables twisting and turning and snaking their way to a single twinkling internet router. And I realized in that moment that I had been trying to run PC software on a Mac. And what I mean by that is I was trying to use systems of discipline on an autistic child that had been developed by non-autistic people. So I decided that night that I was going to think differently and go searching for answers from autistic people themselves. I asked one man, how do I get my son to behave in the library? And he said, you need to think different. Your son is different. He has a different experience of the world. So the reason you're not finding the answer to your question is because you're asking the wrong question. How about asking, why am I taking him to the library at all if he hates it so much? How is that going to foster a love of reading in him? The more I got to know my autistic friends, the more I began to realize that my question was not, how do I change my child? It was, how do I connect with him? So now I want to ask you, with whom in your life are you struggling to connect? And where are you searching for answers and not finding them? I'm going to challenge you today to step out of the box, step away from your computer screen, step out of your perceived expectations of society, and stop looking for answers and start asking new questions. Like, what's their experience of the world? How do other people operate? Because that is how we connect with people. By not merely thinking differently, but by learning to think different. Mr. Contest Chair. Thank you.
Come on.